There are some things that the brand doesn't really support. So one is paid media and Meta. I don't do any paid advertising on Instagram or Threads or any of the Meta platforms. They divested from that organization a while ago. And even when TikTok came up some years ago, there's a lot of conversation about the efficacy of those organizations. And do we want to give our resources and money to them? Or do we want to be alongside and be able to control our brand messaging? So there's conversations of I put more money into Pinterest, for instance, because it gives us full control on how we show up on that platform. And that's really important when you have such a brand that's so highly regarded and you really want to protect the image of that brand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Purpose. I am so elated. My goodness, this is the dream podcast for anyone in the B Corp, social enterprise, for-purpose business space. I am here with Angela Clark. She is the VP Digital at Patagonia, the one, the only, the gold standard of product-based businesses doing good in the world. I have Angela here from Patagonia. Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here today.
I'm so happy to have you. I'm sure she's like so over hearing me fangirl over this episode and over her. And I'm so pumped. But Angela, like I said, I know you're going to bring so much just amazing knowledge of this space and in the world of marketing to the listeners. So let's start with you. Tell us about yourself and how you ended up at Patagonia as the VP of Digital.
Yeah, absolutely. I started in retail my whole career. Even before my first official job after college, I was the girl at the mall working in various department stores and all the things. I really loved fashion. I studied business, and the combination of that led me to merchandising. And then that led me to direct to consumer, catalog, e-com. And once I moved here in California, I worked for a lot of great brands like Pottery Barn and Levi Strauss and True Religion. And I was recruited to fill a new role with the head of digital for Patagonia. So I've been there about 4 years.
Amazing. And my gosh, you have like such a breadth of experience already working in the retail and product-based space. So obviously, listeners, like get a pen, get a notepad. Like this is going to be like such gold. So Patagonia is often held up as the gold standard, as I said, of for-purpose driven businesses. But from your seat, what do most people get wrong about how Patagonia actually operates?
Yeah, I think people assume that because it's an apparel brand that we approach everything as apparel brand first and that the philanthropy, fighting to save the whole planet is secondary. And a lot of times it's actually the opposite. The people who are fighting for environmental causes, what the CEO mainly focuses on, a lot of leadership really starts with environmental impact. And then the retail arm is the engine to allow financing and connections to be able to do those things. So what that means is that sometimes I don't have the same. I kind of have to negotiate a little bit harder for some things that were just assumed in norms at other brands, which is, part of the fun. So it also allows me to have more balance between like actually transactional actions and storytelling and impact, which is the reason I joined because it was a lot more interesting than, on sale today, sale ends tomorrow messaging. So much more to talk about with the product and with the impact that the brand is having.
Oh, that is so cool. What was the thing that most surprised you in this space, coming into it, knowing that it was going to be so different? You talk about working at Levi's and then coming to Patagonia, and maybe you can't talk about your experience at Levi's, but like, what were some things in the space of marketing and for purpose that really was like, whoa, okay, we really have to do things differently here?
Yeah, there's a plus and minus to it. One of the pluses is that, Patagonia is such a well-known brand and there's so many things that actions that they're often doing that they're always being written up. And, there's tons of people circulating things like this podcast will probably be one of my, highest posts on LinkedIn the week that I posted or even for the month. So what that gets you is a lot of earned media. So that means that that's money I don't have to spend at this brand that I might have spent at another brand, and I can repurpose those marketing funds into other channels. I'm more heavy into something like CTV or connected TV because I have those dollars that I don't have to spend on, Meta paid media. And speaking of which, there are some things that the brand doesn't really support. So one is paid media on Meta. I don't do any paid advertising on Instagram or Threads or any of the Meta platforms. They divested from that, organization a while ago, and even when TikTok came up some years ago, there's a lot of conversation about, the efficacy of those organizations, and do we want to give our resources and money to them, or do we want to be alongside and be able to control our brand messaging? So there's conversations of like, I put more money into Pinterest, for instance, because it gives us full control on how we show up on that platform. And that's really important when you have such a brand that's so highly regarded and you really want to protect the image of that brand. So that's just one small example.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I'd love to, if you don't mind, let's just dig into this Pinterest piece a little bit because I find this fascinating. Because I do think as I'm, learning more and more about Pinterest, like what an untapped well for product-based businesses who can be visual and can storytell. So what things are you finding works well? Like, tell us a bit more about your experience on that platform because that's super interesting.
Yeah, so it's a combination of storytelling. A lot of our marketing, where we do have like organic marketing on social, other paid channels, is more high level or brand marketing. It doesn't really talk about the product in specific detail. And in Pinterest, that's a great place to do that, where you can highlight the details, the snaps, the buttons, the
Mm.
fabric, the material, the breathability, all of those aspects in something like a Pinterest, where we might not have the space or we don't approach those other channels that way. So it's almost counterintuitive, but the intent of people who are on Pinterest are shopping, for products specifically. They're looking for ideas and inspiration. Sometimes it might be imagery, sometimes it's actual products, and that just falls right in line with what Patagonia is about. The other great thing about Pinterest is that we were trying to get more female shoppers onto the brand, and Pinterest definitely skews more female. So that gives us that opportunity as well to get in front of those customers.
Oh, that's so wicked. And I love what you said about, like getting really granular because a lot of the time that's missed by e-commerce businesses. They forget that when you're shopping in the land of 2D, you still need to create a 3D experience for people to want to say yes and add to cart and all this kind of stuff. So that's super interesting. I'm really starting to love Pinterest as an opportunity. So that's awesome. So tell us more about your role. And I know that you've never really followed the traditional growth playbooks. And so, how do you decide what rules to follow and which to embrace? And I know that you talked a little about saying no to meta ads, and that's super interesting. But what are some from your like traditional business training backgrounds have you thought like this is just how you do business and then coming to Patagonia and finding out, oh, okay, this is not how we do business.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest is just our plans for growth overall. They're a lot more conservative than other brands I've worked for, especially in the digital space. A lot of times it's the digital channel that's leading the growth metrics for the brand, if they're multi-channel or omni-channel brand. And while that's relatively true for North America, I would say that where it's been unique for my experience is that there wasn't a lot of those sort of traditional best practices just weren't the most important thing, I should say. And so I was trying to balance the things that really matter, that I know work, have worked for other brands, and then the things that are like, well, let's look at this differently because I have a different arsenal toolbox. There are some things, like I said, I can't leverage at this brand. Like if you didn't convert, to hit you back with a discount a couple hours later, like we don't discount our product. We're a very premium brand. So we might reach back out to you if you've abandoned your cart, but it's not going to be a promo code, so it's going to be brand proposition, give you more reasons to potentially consider the purchase of what you have. Or we might tell you, you know what, you didn't convert on that jacket, but did you know that we'll take it back or we'll repair it? There's a lifetime guarantee on that product. So building those other pillars within the organization to really make people convert on something that's more meaningful than just a promo code. which, people want those discounts. We're not completely agnostic. We give you discounts to sign up for email. But outside of that, that's really it. And we're only on sale 2 times a year. So that's fun for someone like me to run a business where I'm not constantly having to deal with, anniversary sales and, every holiday talking about messaging. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But for our brand in particular, it gives you the space to really think about more long-term growth strategies, how to build a business that's a lot more profitable. So really trying to assess the acquisition play versus your retention play, and deciding what's the right balance for that brand. I saw a huge opportunity to grow retention when I first started 4 years ago. And I think as marketing dollars become more and more expensive to market on different, outward bound things to acquire people, the more I can get leverage out of those people who are already in a retention channel, the better that is, that I can be more experimental with the funds that I do have. I've had the biggest budget I've ever had from a marketing perspective at this brand, but nobody's budget is endless. So you always have to be pretty smart about where those dollars are, and like always kind of checking that, something that worked 6 months ago might not work today. And I think that having that sort of nimble mindset is really, really key. And I think it's really helped us out a lot to sort of kind of experiment. And there's definitely things that like this worked. And then we would, put and implement a new tool to understand how we evaluate our marketing spend. And we're like, oh crap, that actually doesn't work as well for us as we thought it did. Let's pivot and spend our money elsewhere. So
Oh my gosh. Okay. So many questions. I'm interested about this not discounting piece.
yeah.
Like, do you find that by getting people to convert on something that's more meaningful, like the storytelling of Patagonia or the impact of Patagonia, do you find that that ends up leading to a longer lifetime value of a customer because it's not so transactional? Or do you find that, you really have to work? Or is there like a part of it that's brand affinity as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I would say
Mhm.
that the benefit is that, for a lot of people, a considered purchase. Average jacket for outerwear could be $300, and not everybody has $300 to spend on an outerwear piece. So you want to make sure that if they're spending that type of money on something that might actually look like something else that's out there for a third of the price, that they understand why our product is the price that it is. They understand that it's fair trade, which is something we don't actually talk that much about. We're fully vertically integrated. Again, like if you buy that product and it fails you in any way, shape, or form, we're going to take care of you. And so I hear stories all the time of people coming to me and say, I had this jacket, I took it back to Patagonia store to see if they could repair it because I love it so much. And they repaired it for me and now it's even better. Or, there's so many cool things on Reddit. You can go on a Reddit wormhole about like people's experiences with the brand. It's so much fun. And that's one of my favorite parts. So I think that that's a great tool. And then the other flip side is that when you're not on sale as much, and we're the main brand, we're also sold in a lot of wholesale accounts. So some of those huge wholesale brands have a really robust loyalty program. So maybe they might be able to get it at a discount at that brand versus our brand. And so you have to sort of just be okay with that and not try to compete against the REIs and Dick's Sporting Goods of the world. Like they're much bigger than us. And so it's trying to find like what's the right niche for us, what's the right experience. And I think that's for me why the customer experience overall and being able to tell that rich storytelling on a platform that, nothing gets an REI, but they've got a million brands to talk about. So they're not going to give the same sort of space and credibility to it that we would. And that to me is my brand differentiator. And then on top of that, like I said, the services that we have, just kind of giving people more reasons to come to the brand. And our research have shown that when people interact, since they bought used, they bought new, they've repaired something or they've resold something back to us, that those are the customers who do have a long lifetime value, continue to come back to it.
Mm. Okay, amazing. So it sounds like, that gold standard too of customer service is what Patagonia has as well. And like just going above and beyond and making sure that everyone's taken care of. Like you said, like if the jacket fails, like you're not going to be put on hold for, 10 hours as you're like, all the down is coming out of my jacket. And it's like, oh, well, we're going to quiz you on this. It's like, just send it back. Like That is so important. And, I remember hearing a story from one of my old neighbors where his car got stuck and I don't know, he was at like a golf course or something. And they sat at the bar because it was like coming down with rain. And he called his car company and they picked up the car. And then the guy who's sitting at the bar with him, a different car company, both luxury cars. Nope, get a taxi, like, too bad. And he's like, and he'll always go with that car company forever because he's just like, they didn't have to do this, but they did. And like that's what you need in a company, right? Like someone you're like money's a privilege, and being able to spend it where people are going to take care of you is so important. And so that's so great that Patagonia does that. And what a differentiator too, right? Like not everyone's doing this. People are taking their customers for granted. It's like with voters. If you love each and every one of them and know that they all matter, then that's so important. So that's
Yeah.
amazing to hear. And no surprise, of course.
Yeah,
Um,
and honestly, that's something I've always really looked for in the brands that I've associated with is, I'm a professional shopper, right? That's why I have the job that I have. I have high expectations that I don't want to shop with anyone where I can't return the product. I don't want to shop with anyone that if I have that bad experience, this one's going to talk about that bad experience. And then if they have the opposite, you surprise and delight them. And some people are like, how can you afford to do this or do that? Like, how can you take back a jacket that's 15 years old? You know what? Once you've done that, that person is, like you said, is a customer for life. And not only that, is they're going to be your biggest advocates. So when we talk about that earned media, that's like that share of voice is like exponential because, like I said, every time I go to a conference, I get one person telling me some phenomenal story about one of their products, and that they're a customer for life, and that is an invaluable play. So.
Peeking a little bit behind the curtains, what are some of the behind the scenes practices or systems that enable Patagonia to stay aligned with their mission as they scale? Because obviously, there's no such thing as a 100% sustainable business.
Yeah.
And there's decisions that need to be made. So, how do you guys make those decisions?
Yeah. Well, that has really nothing to do with me. There's some amazing teams within the organization. So they have, real world, highly educated scientists who are deciding and understanding, evaluating how can we continue to be better and better at what we do? How can we, now they're looking at not only can we design a great product from the beginning, can we design it that we can also dismantle that product when it comes to end of life. So you're looking at the full life cycle of a product. Like, what an incredible challenge. There is a center on our second campus called The Forge, and they're always experimenting with materials and new things. Like, it is literally a science lab, and it's just like the coolest thing to go into and see people sort of always pushing themselves and innovating. And I think that approach goes across the full organization. It's a very communal, organization as far as making decisions. And so with that, you're often being challenged on like what is the right thing to do. So for instance, a loyalty program, that I came in interviewing on when I first started was met with a lot of skepticism because there's a lot of loyalty programs that are bad actors or the proposition really denigrates the brand overall. So it's hours and hours of conversations with multiple people. I've said this to someone else. We have a brand philosopher, which is totally new to the organization. He's one of the friends of the founders. He's been with the organization since the very beginning. We're 52 years in now. And he, if there's something like the loyalty program was another one, I rebranded it as a membership program because it's really about building community and not about transaction. So I touched base with him about like, what would you see a membership program being for Patagonia that's uniquely Patagonia, that feels brand appropriate, that holds up the pillars of the brand? I have my take on it, but it's really important. And what I've learned the most at this brand is really bringing in multiple opinions, multiple thoughts to really come to a full conclusion. Because especially for a brand like this, you might think you know all the answers, but there's always something that you might not have thought of. And you have to be really open to being challenged. With your direction and your thought, and be willing to sort of morph and change as needed.
Wow. And to know it's possible too, right? Like
Mhm.
just hearing you speak about how you've had to kind of upend a lot of the learnings that you've had from traditional marketing, but still be able to be very successful in your role and continue to grow Patagonia to where it is today and still be very successful at doing that. Like, it is possible. And I think that a lot of the times in this space, founders, whether they're founders or they're working within an organization, it's, status quo just seems to be the status quo. And it's like, well, it can't be done that way. Well, why not? Well, it's always done this way. And, well, no, if you want to do something better, if you want to do something that aligns with your values, like, you can do it because you guys are proving it every single day. So that's amazing. Let's talk a bit about storytelling. I know we talked a little bit about this when you were talking about some of the channels you use, but obviously you guys invest very heavily in storytelling. And so how do you measure the ROI of content that isn't directly related to selling? Like, I'm thinking about the beautiful mountain vistas or those rock climbers somewhere in Yosemite.
So it depends on the channel, but I think what we've done, like email's a great example. Like email's KPIs, key performance indicators are really direct, right? Open rate, conversion, all of those things, right? Click-through rates. But there are emails that we send that are literally just, a feel-good message or an update about our impact report or something of that nature. So what we really look at is just like more engagement metrics in that perspective. So did people open at a rate that was higher than an average that might be in transactional email? Did people click through? Did they actually spend time on that page once we landed on the page, and scroll depth, and how engaged were they? Did they click around if there were CTAs? So we sort of look at those metrics and then just measure them, a benchmark against other ones. And then when it comes to direct marketing, external marketing, when you're looking at brand on platforms for digital, really sort of looking at a full, kind of like a matrix. There's some things that you just know are going to be about reach and impressions, and there's other things that you're going to want to drive some sort of action or engagement with. And just knowing that you can kind of, have the different puzzle pieces sort of fit together. And like I said, so sometimes that means that my growth rates aren't as high. That means that maybe my conversion rate might be lower than another brand. But at the end of the day, if that's the goal, and I think that's where I've really challenged my team to sort of like set a KPI that's realistic, that feels good for us, and know that over time for the year, we might be trying to fit this goal. And there might be 5 or 6 things that, some other brand would never do because they're literally not going to get any engagement. It's just a voice out there. And that's definitely a case a lot of times when it's coming from the environmental team or something like this. Like, we had a campaign to, save the wild lands of Alaska. We want people to donate money to that. We want people to take action. We want people to write their congressman. There is nothing to do with selling outerwear in that situation, right? So just knowing when we have those lanes. And one fun thing that I've sort of implemented was, like, how do we measure those different things? And then how do we build like our own definition of what long lifetime value is, because we care about people engaging in activism. We care about people learning about how to save the home planet alongside with the other things that people do at a traditional brand. So I thought it was important to be able to measure that, because you can't change something if you can't measure it, right? So it's very important that you measure it and you know what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so, that's sort of how my brain works. So
That's so cool. Okay, so you're saying that Patagonia has its own lifetime value definition and that it's largely
yeah, it's
based
something we're
around.
still in works. It was something that I challenged the team on probably about 2 years in. We just like, ideation of like we this brilliant, brilliant consumer insights team. And so I said, how could we think about the activism customer and the customer who buys food or the customer who only buys used product? And how do we know that we can take a customer who might buy something, a product from us, and maybe move them to activism? That's the ultimate goal. If every customer took an action to save the home planet, imagine the impact we could make, right? So we want to see like how could we actually move them there? And so what does it look like when a customer only is an activism customer? What's the customer that sort of bridges all three of those things? And then could we create customer journeys that are specific to that, just to get people along? And some people come along and they watch a fully featured film on the website, and a lot of brands might not do that. And to us, like, what is that? What's the value for that? Like, how many people engage in that? What do they do after that? Do they show up to a store and go to a book signing? Do they show up to do a trail cleanup? Like, there's so many things happening within your organization, and I really wanted to be able to identify all those things and connect them all, and then sort of move to the future. And now it's like we're kind of ahead of the curve because so many brands are building storytelling teams. They're building this engagement arm that is purely about building a community and engagement. And so for me, I wanted to be able to see all that data because I'm very data focused, and to be able to just understand better how we can build that community and add more value to the customers.
I want to share something that I'm building alongside this podcast. It's a community for purpose-driven, product-based founders who don't want to build alone and who want to grow smarter, not just harder. After years of supporting founders at Shopify, I kept seeing the same thing: mission-led entrepreneurs doing meaningful work, but lacking a peer space that helps them move faster and make better decisions without compromising their values. This community is designed to be a growth accelerator, a place to learn what's working, pressure test ideas, share real tactics, and build momentum together so growth feels intentional, supportive, and sustainable. If you're interested, join the waitlist. Find the link in the show notes below. Oh, okay. That segues perfectly because I would love to, chat more about community. It seems to be the latest and greatest. I feel like when I log into LinkedIn now, like everyone's talking about in-person events and how to, meet with more like-minded people. So you obviously feel like Patagonia and your customers are more like a community rather than a customer base. And so how do you build this? Obviously, like you have some tactics. It sounds like you guys do cleanups and things like that and engage this group and still use it as an authentic selling point. And then what are the key touch points where you build trust with these customers? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of ways that they can come in. But does that live within your domain, and how are you able to just continue to grow it while people still feel like they're part of a family that I would imagine probably feels a bit small
Yeah.
because it started small?
Yeah. I think that that intimacy of connection with the brand is really personal, and we try really hard to honor that as much as possible. So, you have to think that our customer base is so broad. You have people from 7 different types of sports. It might be a mountain biker, a surfer, rock climber, someone who buys for their kids. So that has certain demographics alone. And then you have the different channels, right? So all of those communities are so unique unto themselves. And, if you think about a rock climber, they have their own tribal language. I don't know what they're talking about half the time. I've never rock climbed. They're talking about shifts and clear. I have no idea what you're saying. But the minute that we would try to engage with that community and not use their tribal language, you've lost. You've lost the core customer. And so there's
Totally.
often this challenge of like, how do you speak to that person who's deep in the sport and keep that authority, but then also be aspirational enough for those people who are just inspired by and someday aspire to be at that, but they're not so off put. I don't know if I think the cycling community is a good example of this. If you go into a premium bike shop, 5 out of 6 of them are going to treat you like if you're not spending $5,000 on a bike or more, like, why are you here? Like, that's a terrible feeling, right? At some point, you have to start somewhere. My first bike was $500. Then I got the $3,000 bike, and I still don't have a $10,000 bike. But the finding the bike shop where no matter what price point is, they're excited to have you there and know that the more you engage with that brand long term, you might end up being the person who comes back and buys a $5,000 bike, but down the road. And it's a long-term play. And I think that that's really part of the magic sauce is like knowing that we're in those communities and we're not just celebrating them, we're deeply embedded in those communities. So what that means is go back to the rock climbing community. If they're doing something, we have a store in Jackson Hole, there's going to be a film there, or they're going to talk about rock climbers. I'm going to have an expert there. Like having those engaging moments is what sort of gives us that true authenticity. We did an Ask Me Anything with an athlete on Reddit, and it was amazing. Like it was just really amazing to see what people showed up, what people really engaged in. And so I think that that is really part of it. So you have to be really personalized. You have to be really specific to each community niche, which is challenging. There's only so many people, there's only so much time, there's only so much money you have. This is where I'm trying to lean more into technology to allow us to be able to understand like which communities resonate with what. Some communities love to like spunk. What am I trying to say? Some communities we like to go through like big pictures and be, wowed by something visual, and other communities are like, I don't care about that. I'm on my surfboard. Like, if it's really real, don't sell me on something. Like, I would just want to know the facts, right? And so, trying to understand the personalities of each one of those communities, and then having unique product information and product selling for each of those communities is really critical. So I think that's a big part of it. And then just letting them sort of grow organically. I think so the more people try to force something, people sense it, they smell it, right? And so sometimes that means like you have a goal and you didn't meet the goal, but that's okay. I'd rather protect that relationship and that connection and us feeling like we're part of that community than feel like we've violated that trust. Because once you've done that, you're not going to get it back, or it takes a long time to get it back. So there's a lot of tactics. So with the team, as far as like just understanding each one of those communities intimately. There's another team outside of mine who they're all athletes. They're deep into those sports. And so we really rely on them to sort of guide us on what's the right way to navigate those communities so we don't make any faux pas.
That's so cool. Wow, it sounds like in my past life working in politics, like this sounds like a political office. Like you have
Yeah.
these like regional teams where you're like, will this play in Quebec? And they're like, definitely not. And you're like, okay, okay.
It's and there's a lot of ex-politicians within the brand. There's a lot of activists or former activist people in the brand, and it shows. Yeah.
That is so cool. Oh, my silly comment just lost the question. Oh, I know. Reddit. Let's talk about Reddit for a second because you mentioned it at the top, but just hearing you talk about these very niche communities, does Reddit come into play? This is also something that is becoming a little more talked about is like these very, very niche subreddits where
Yeah.
people live. Is that
Yeah.
something that Patagonia plays with?
Absolutely. I think for my team, because we're doing paid media, customer experience stuff on platform, a lot of times we're the ones who see it. We're most times just observing what's happening and what people are talking about. We have experimented with some paid marketing that's worked really well for us. I think it's something that you have to make sure you're not over, engineering. You're respecting those communities as well. You're not falsely coming in there pretending to be something that you're not. Like, I've heard people say that they're going to do these things and they're like, oh, cringe. But what's really cool? Like, there's this really cool example, and it's a little long, but I'll get into it. So, we had a short that was, came in different lengths. So, a men's short, 7-inch inseam, 5-inch inseam, whatever. Somebody says, is like, I wish they came back with X amount inseam. And there's a whole Reddit conversation of community about this short, and we decided to bring it back. And I just happen to be reading and Googling things, and I see that there's this Reddit thread about this short inseam, and people start getting hyped. They're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. They're bringing back this short inseam. I've had these shorts, I've had, whatever. Like, people really fanned out on this stuff. So the short comes out. People get excited about it. They're letting people know it's coming. Like, people are asking, is it going to be in Europe? Is it going to be here? Like, all these things, all this exciting stuff happens. And so I said, you know what? What if we acknowledge that we saw that people were asking for this in our own channels? So in our retention channel, we said, we heard you. This short is back based on blah, blah, blah. And we barely reference Reddit, but people, if you know, you know. Then what happened is Reddit found out that we commented about Reddit. Then Reddit's kind of pumped us up and said, hey, Patagonia is listening to their customers through Reddit. Like, they really care about what you think. What else do you guys like wish Patagonia would be back for? I wish we had this for Trader Joe's. I'm not gonna lie. Because I think there's a whole community at Trader Joe's of like something that you loved, you've been buying for 3 years, and they just discontinue it, and you have no warning. And I'm still mad about some things that I've loved. There's an Indian dish that they stopped making, and I'm mad to this day. It's been like 5 years. So I would love to be a part of that. I'd love to be part of that Reddit community. Is like, yeah, like how do they know? Or you can remake it by doing XYZ, right? So there's all these hacks, all these stories about, product. There was a really cool one where someone had a jacket that they sent in for repairs, and they had it forever. And the person who did the repair made like a matters pattern, like it was all this like color blocked. And it was so cool. The guy was like, "This is so much cooler than the original jacket." And all these people were like, "I didn't even know they did repairs." I'm like, "Well, my repair look like this." And other people are like, "Okay, don't get too hyped. They're not all gonna look this cool." But know that, there's someone behind the scenes who took that item and loved it as much as you did and did something really cool with it. Like, so people are like, "I didn't even know they did repairs. I didn't even know they do that." So all of that is happening. Like that's brand gold, right? And I think the beauty of that is to understand it, read it, learn it from it, but at the same time, don't stick your nose in it, because then it starts to, then the people will shy away from it, right? And I think that's the beauty of Reddit is, like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's a message we have about repairs that we can utilize. Maybe we can highlight this jacket that someone that like everyone thought was so cool. We had a pattern that launched last spring or last holiday, and it went viral mainly because of Reddit. We had a small video that the designer talked about the inspiration for. It was called Salmon Energy, and it like flew off the shelves. And then you've got people in Reddit trying to resell and what they cut, all this stuff. It was insane. So I would say if you have a brand that people are really passionate about, if you just, spend some time on Reddit, to me, it's highly entertaining above everything else. But then I think the other thing that's really great about that Reddit community is you really get to hear like how people truly feel about your brand, to be inspired by. And now with AI and chatbots, the fact that we have so much energy in Reddit, it's really saving us in this AI world, because that's one of the main resources for all these, agents and things, is they're looking for that Reddit content, and we just happen to be
True.
out there organically. So it's been a huge win for us.
Yeah, that's true. Like even just thinking about, shopping, people are now going to chatbots to shop, and you already have your ambassadors all over one of the main sources. So again, like another great reason to think about, not think about Reddit, because I guess you guys aren't using it. It's more just like a listening tool, but how to engage in those communities. I think that that's really cool. So you talked about how you have some scientists on your team. And so, in my 9 to 5, some of the work that I've done has been, working on like complicated corporate sustainability communications. And obviously it can be very, very complex and kind of boring, to be honest. How do you take these and wrap them up in a way that your customers get excited about it? Because obviously that's so important to Patagonia's getting these advocates excited about these complicated issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a fine art as well. I mean, to your point, it is. We just did an impact report last fall. So that was our version of sort of talking about, what things we're doing to be a better brand, to make a lower impact on the things that we produce, and talk about our environmental impact overall. And it's not the most exciting thing. It's far from sexy. But what is interesting is trying to package it up in a way that for the people that do care about it, it's interactive enough and there's enough information there that, for those who want to go down a rabbit hole and understand the deepest data that we have that we can share, that's available for them. But for somebody who might just land on a page because we sent an email about it, there's enough there they kind of get what's happening. I think what's really critical too is to not force things on people. I think it's really easy to say like, this is important to Patagonia, therefore it must be important to you. And that's not often the case, especially when you get to anyone who's marketed brand products is like the feature benefits thing. Sometimes you're like, let's tell them every little thing, the thread count, the stitch distance, all stuff. At the end of the day, does it look good? Does it fit me well? Does it perform the way I want? It's great if I have all that, but you might actually lose people if you put that in front of them too soon. So it's just trying to find like the indicators people like want that information. I've even learned that at other brands, that sometimes we would, at Levi, it's like the stretch, mobility and all this stuff. And like at the end of the day, is it comfortable? That's all they really care about, and does it look good? And it's great that we have all that information, because there's going to be like maybe 1 in 20 that wants to know that deep information, right? But if you put that in front of people too soon, or you force them to go through that information, a lot of times you just lose people. And it's like, they're not going to say they don't care, but they don't care.
Okay, so understanding this is a good point, because I say a lot of times to e-commerce brands that are, you know, struggling with their product pages, like the more the better. But this is a great point because it's like you need to have enough to help them have an easy yes. Like if you're selling a desk and you don't tell them the dimensions, it's not helpful. But do you need to tell them that like the wood grain is, XYZ and things like that? Probably not, but having it on hand doesn't hurt in case anyone asks. But that's a good call, is like really understanding your customers, because there might have been a world where in a Patagonia world where your customers did want to know the thread count and like the down stuffing, whatever. I don't know how what any of these things are. But then you get to learn who your customers are and you find out that they don't care. And so if that's a big part of it, is like understanding who they are and who cares about what and putting that in front of them. So that's really interesting. So, thinking about our listeners, for brands who are trying to build both impact and revenue, where should they focus first? And what could be the minimum viable version of doing this right? Because not everyone has been around for 52 years, where everyone sees, like, oh, is that a Patagucci? And, like, you guys have brand affinity like nobody else. So, for someone just, in the smaller starting stages, what do you think that could look like?
Yeah, I think it starts with, because I started merchandising, I'm always going to be like, it has to be profitable, right? So I think if there is a way for you to carve out a little bit of profitability to test some things, I think that's really important because it can be expensive to go after impact or messaging or things of that nature. But when you're looking at a long-term view, 3 years, 5 years out, what you gain from that exponentially pays for itself, right? So you really have to um, maybe find a way to maybe peel off a little bit of those goals and opportunities and say, well, where can I test something? Or if you're exceeding your goal, instead of banking that money, maybe that's the money that you utilize to do some impact testing, right? To kind of see, like, can we do a community environment thing? Can we, do something in real life that gets people excited about something that we're trying to do? Or is it just sort of letting people know, like, we've made these changes, we're looking to make bigger changes, not overpromising things, I think is really important. That you're really transparent about what you're able to accomplish and not accomplish so that you don't fall into the greenwashing trap that a lot of brands fall into. Because I think people respect the effort more so than, just as much as the execution. So to be able to say, like, our goal was here and we met it here, but we've achieved, so much from where we were, people really resonate with that. And I think that's really critical. So for me, I would say really being crystal clear on like what impact you want to make, what the goal is, and what you're trying to achieve with that. You have to spend the time and energy on that. And then you can sort of focus on, the business part of that. You probably have that part down already.
It's true. And like, I think that also trips people up, is they go after impact. Like I have to be doing this, or I have to be giving like 50%, or I have to be whatever, to the point where you're right. They kill their margins or they lose
Yeah.
out on the profitability. And then they turn around, they're like, wait, why do we have, like, where's our cash flow?
Yeah.
And it's because rather than investing back in the business, they just started doing impact right away, or
Yeah.
figuring out, yeah, those pieces. So I agree,
Yeah.
it
I think
needs to
it's
be
really
profitable.
right, totally. And I think it's really critical too that, if you're going to do something that's going to erode your margin, like what is the opposite thing you can do to sort of build it up? Like, is there a balance of a yin and a yang? Because you could easily find yourself doing a lot of good and gooding yourself right out of profitability. So I think it's critical that you sort of think about like, okay, we're going to do this. This is the right thing to do for the brand. Maybe that's, eating $1 million, let's just say. What else could I possibly do to make up that million elsewhere? And looking at it holistically as an organization, I think is really important. And that takes resources, which just sometimes means people, right? So it's also something that I think someone can't be like a part-time job for them or a job on top of the job they already have. But if it's something you seriously want to do, then I think you seriously have to invest in the people to do that and think about it. And I think that's the one thing I really learned at Patagonia is like, they have those teams of people across the board, from product design to environmental impacts to storytellers. And that's why it works. It's not something it's just like, oh, I'm a marketer and oh, I'm also going to think about the activism arm. No, there's a whole team, their activism, so they have that luxury to really do their best work there.
Yeah, it's nice that they're able to have those teams and thinking about people just starting out. It's, perhaps it's finding an advisory team that
Yeah.
helps you with some of these things that where they're able to, maybe they're volunteering their time or, you're giving them a bit of a stipend so that you're not having to wear all these hats. You hear from founders all the time, find your mentors. And maybe one of your mentors is, how the heck do I do advocacy as a business owner? And they can help you so you don't screw it
Yeah,
all up.
for sure.
What are the next steps for Patagonia, if you're able to share anything, if anything?
Well, I can speak for my world.
Mhm.
So was working on designing a digital experience that is able to navigate all the different customer sets that we talked about, all the different sports, men, women, kids, family, bringing in, food, used product, new product, being able to have some personalized messaging and personalized experience in the digital
Mhm.
space, which
Mhm.
this is where I thank God for AI, because the technology is actually here where I think we'll actually be able to deliver on that promise. Let's be real, retail's been promising one-to-one personalization for 20 years. We haven't done it very well, right? And so I think we're kind of getting to that place. And I don't know if I'm going to be at
Cool.
one-to-one, but I might be one-to-many, to be able to say like, oh, this person's a rock climber and they live in this part of the country and this is what they care about. I'm never going to serve them up something with Patagonia kids because they've never bought anything with Patagonia
Right,
kids,
right,
or they
right.
don't care about food, or this person's bought Patagonia beer religiously. What else might be an affinity for
Yeah.
them on this? Yeah, it's a thing. We have Patagonia
Stop the presses. Oh my
millions
gosh, what?
Patagonia.com. Yes.
I think it's
Yes, there's a
available in
brand called
Canada.
Patagonia Provisions, and they sell Patagonia beer and various other things, tin
So
fish and
cool.
things of that nature. So that's a perfect example of like there's all these
Mhm.
other aspects of the business that people don't really know about. And so I want to be able to give that visibility to them. So we're spending a lot of time on that. I spoke before a little
Cool.
bit about, being able to measure customer success differently by a unique index that the team is building. So those
Yeah.
are some things that are long-term projects that I think will fundamentally move the brand forward, and make us all be able to do our jobs a little smarter. So yeah, it's a good time.
That is so cool. And I wish you all the best of luck. I remember talking about personalization ad nauseum at Shopify. So it's like definitely the dream. And so it'll be cool. And I hope that I just have all my ads are just all puffers all the time on Pinterest. And then I'll know you've cracked the code.
Right,
Um,
right. Weather specific, all the things.
Yep, 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 yep. I don't need a raincoat here in
Right.
Alberta. It's
Yeah.
sunny every single day, so no problems. That's so cool. Okay, I love this. This is awesome. Well, you are doing so many amazing things. I mean, as a marketer, as someone in the for-purpose space, like everyone listening has so much to learn from you, Angela, so I really appreciate it. But before you go, we do have some rapid fire
Yes.
questions.
Okay.
Are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Tea all day.
Tea, really?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite kind of tea?
I'm usually drinking something with ginger in it or green tea. Yeah.
Okay, staying healthy. I like
Uh-huh.
it. Good for you. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm a converted night owls now, early bird. I think really clearly first thing in the morning. So I'm an
Wow.
early bird. Yeah.
Okay, I will have to ask you more questions about this offline as I still need to be on Eastern time and Mountain time. And so
Yeah.
I am like a recovering night owl and it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
How do you decompress after a work day?
I commute 3 days a week, and so in my commute, a lot of times it's music. Music is like speaks
Nice.
to my soul very deeply, so I'm usually rocking out in the car. I'm that person singing along, belting along. in the car next to you, and I don't care because it makes me happy.
I love that. What is
Or
like,
going to the gym.
what's on your playlist right now? What's on your Spotify playlist?
I am really obsessed with Willow Smith. I think her catalog, for as young as she is so interesting. You have to get past like the songs that are on the radio, get deep into her
Okay.
catalog. Some
Okay.
really cool stuff there. Yeah, very inspiring.
Okay. Noted. Everyone, we have the playlist now. Awesome. What's your go-to comfort food?
Mac and cheese.
Mm, that sounds amazing. I actually
Yeah.
want that for dinner now.
Yeah, hands down. Just some Midwest roots for sure.
I love it. What is your current brand obsession?
Oh man. It's an answer that I probably is gonna sound bad. I'm obsessed with Zara because of how they've repositioned themselves. Like I'm gonna use past tense because I think they were fast fashion. I don't know if they're really fast fashion anymore. It's really interesting to see, there was a time you would go into a store space that felt like a European, high-end store and you were buying things at $10, $20 a pop. Last time I was in there, here in LA, everything I touched was 150 and up. So that yes, and the design aesthetic's really cool. It feels like you're shopping in a high-end experience, and I don't know for sure, but and this is my business brain why I'm obsessed with them is like I feel like they've decided the way that they can impact sustainability is to have you buy less product by elevating their product. That's my hypothesis. So I'm just sitting on the sidelines watching to see if that's really true, but I've never seen a brand go up market in a way that Zara has done.
Interesting.
And from what I can tell, customers are still there shopping. I wear Zara, so
Yeah, no,
it's
I
really
actually
challenging.
I see what you're saying because I actually got something from Zara recently and I haven't bought anything from Zara in a very long time because it always just kind of felt
Yeah.
like yeah, like I was gonna wear it once or twice and then I'd look in the mirror one day and be like, "Oh gosh, this does not fit me at
Right,
all."
right. What
Um,
happened?
but yeah, no, but I know, I agree with you. I think that they're getting some of their pieces right and it seems a bit more like it's trendy, but it's also very classic where it's
Yeah.
like the skirt I bought, I'll probably wear next year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
so
think they're getting
I
away
agree.
from like it's what's hot now, and then you're gonna sell that thing and get to the next thing. I think they had a lot of like real leather in the store, which I've never seen
Oh
before. And
wow.
so, this is probably the last thing I should say working for Patagonia.
Yeah, you needed to say something incredibly
But
green. What will they think?
other than that, my other obsession would just be jewelry. I'm just a jewelry fanatic.
Well, yeah, because now I think the last time we chatted, you also had really cool earrings. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like it. I love it. I think it was the COVID. I never really was a jewelry
Mm.
person. And then you realize you're just like a square
Yeah.
box all day and you're like,
Yes, the minimum you could do is some earrings and a bracelet or something or a necklace. Yeah. I love
totally.
jewelry. I used to make my own jewelry, so I'm very obsessed with the tribal roots of how we adorned ourselves through the centuries.
That's cool. Oh my gosh. There's like a whole other podcast to talk about your jewelry making, but unfortunately, we don't have time for that. But where can people find you, Angela, if they have any questions or want to connect?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is my second home. I'm there. I'm
Okay.
Angela D. Clark. There's a lot of Angela Clarks on LinkedIn. You can find me there. DM me, reach out to me. I'm always available. Love to connect with people.
Amazing. Well, Angela, again, thank you so much for your time. And again, the listeners are just going to eat this up, and I just appreciate everything. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Talking Purpose. My hope is that today's episode gave you the tools and the inspiration to lead with even more intention. If you enjoyed the episode, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to help us grow this community of changemakers. If you have a question for our guest or a topic you want us to dive into next, drop a comment below. I read every single one.